Something shocking just happened. Moments ago, Zak Bagans finally broke his silence about a banned Ghost Adventures episode the network pulled off television and ordered never to be released. Fans have whispered about it for years, but until now, nobody knew why the footage vanished. Zak's statement is chilling, and the details he reveals raise terrifying questions about what the team experienced behind locked doors. This isn't about demons, scratches, or whispers anymore. It's about something that affected the crew weeks after filming, something that spread. Before we go any further, subscribe now if you love paranormal deep dives, because what follows may change how you watch Ghost Adventures forever. When the episode was first teased in early 2017, nothing seemed unusual. Ghost Adventures uploaded a 14-second trailer showing the crew entering a crumbling psychiatric hospital in rural Indiana, a building that had been shuttered since the late 90s, fenced off by the state, and rumored to trigger violent behavioral spirals in anyone who stayed overnight. The teaser racked up hundreds of thousands of views in hours. Then, suddenly, the video disappeared. Social media posts from the official Ghost Adventures accounts referencing the lockdown were quietly scrubbed. The scheduled air date vanished from network listings. At first, fans assumed a production delay, maybe a rights issue, nothing new in television. But something strange followed. Days after its removal, Zak Bagans appeared on a routine promotional livestream looking shaken, eyes sunken, voice lower than normal. Viewers commented that he blinked too slowly, as if struggling to focus. When asked about the missing episode, Zak's smile froze. His only response was a vague, "Some locations push back." Moments later, the live stream abruptly cut off. Recorded copies of that broadcast were pulled by the network almost immediately. Forums exploded. Fans cited whispers from anonymous crew members claiming the episode had aired once in a European test market at 2 in the morning, only to be pulled before U.S. distribution. A handful of viewers insisted they'd seen a figure in the background that looked exactly like Zak, standing in a hallway, watching the crew. At the same time, Zak was on camera somewhere else. Most of these claims were dismissed as fan exaggeration, until other witnesses reported similar sightings. Meanwhile, production assistants, who had been active on social media, suddenly fell silent. One posted cryptically, "There are things you don't film a second time," then deleted their account entirely. That's when investigators noticed something chilling. The building the episode was filmed in wasn't just condemned. It had been placed under a behavioral quarantine order in 1994, a legal classification used for contagious psychological phenomena. 5 employees had vanished without a trace during its final year. Access logs show no official investigation ever followed. The network refused to comment. Zak refused to elaborate, and the episode, nicknamed by fans the Duplicate Lockdown, was erased so surgically that many began to wonder if something followed the crew home. And one question simmered beneath every thread. If this wasn't paranormal, what was the network afraid the public would see? The asylum at the center of the banned episode was once known as Eastfield Behavioral Research Hospital, but that name doesn't show up anywhere online now. Every traceable document lists it simply as EBR Facility, like the state wanted to erase the branding. Construction finished in 1958, built on federal funding earmarked for experimental therapeutic observation. Locals claimed it wasn't a hospital at all. It was a psychological testing site for patients reporting auditory hallucinations and visual duplication disorders. Early newspaper clippings describe patients insisting they saw copies of themselves lurking in hallways, mimicking gestures a second too late. Former employees told reporters it wasn't the patients that frightened them, it was the building. Doors that creaked open in perfect synchrony, footsteps that echoed with delayed timing, and hallways that produced whispers resembling the voices of staff. In 1994, after 5 disappearances and an internal investigation that remains sealed to this day, the state padlocked the gates. But unlike most closures, Eastfield wasn't mothballed. It was quarantined. Signs warned of behavioral contamination risk. The meaning was never explained. When Zak's research team pulled property records for filming approval, they found a handwritten note attached to one copy of the report. "Do not enter East Wing after midnight. Mirrors must stay covered. No signature, no explanation. During pre-production interviews, a former nurse, face blurred, admitted staff routinely covered reflective surfaces because patients claimed their reflections made facial expressions they didn't. She described one man who refused to sleep unless mirrors were draped. Security logs show he vanished 2 days later. His bed sheets were found folded neatly, as if he'd stepped out of existence rather than walked away. The network saw this as perfect television bait until a secondary clearance request came back, stamped with an unusual warning. Record at your own liability. Extended exposure may alter perceptive interpretation. Network lawyers shrugged it off. Zack didn't. He saved a screenshot of the warning, and when the crew arrived on location, locals refused to guide them to the entrance. One old man murmured they closed it because the building started learning. The camera caught Zack just barely, pausing when he heard that. The worst part? The door to the east wing, supposedly sealed, was found unlocked, and something had scratched "Return the copy" across the paint. The very moment filming began, the building's behavior changed. The air inside the east wing sat unnaturally still, like stepping into a photograph. Zack noted on camera that his voice felt denser, as if the sound absorbed rather than echoed. Behind him, Aaron joked nervously, "It's like the walls are listening." That line didn't age well. During their first walkthrough, they noticed something odd. The hallways seemed just slightly longer on camera. When Billy compared live footage to architectural blueprints, the corridor stretched an additional 6 feet that didn't exist on paper. Zack laughed it off. Buildings shift over time. But minutes later, when they retraced their steps, the hallway had shortened again, swallowing the extra distance. That's when Aaron whispered, "Did it move?" Moments later, something captured everyone's attention. In the far corner of the hall, layered beneath static, was the sound of Billy's voice, muffled, delayed, repeating what he had just said 5 seconds earlier. Jay replayed it, confused, thinking it was audio bleed. But on the second playback, the voice changed tone. Same words. Wrong emotional inflection, like a bad impression. Zack immediately ordered the team to mark timestamps. That's standard protocol. But something more troubling happened. Every time they spoke, their words began returning to them through vents and decaying door frames. Out of sync, slower, lower. It sounded less like an echo and more like someone practicing. While filming in the patient intake corridor, Aaron stopped. He stared through the doorway, eyes wide, whispering, "I just saw myself walk past that hall." They reviewed the camera feed. Nothing. But Aaron insisted he saw a figure matching his height, his jacket, his haircut, walking with its shoulders slightly slumped, head tilted downward, like someone wearing his identity uncomfortably. Zack pulled him aside, whispering so quietly the camera barely picked it up. "Don't engage if you see yourself, not the eyes." He knew. He'd heard stories about places like this. As they continued toward the east wing, motion sensors started triggering behind them, one by one, perfectly tracking their previous footsteps with a delayed rhythm, as if something was following, just a few seconds behind, copying their path. And then Jay froze. His thermal camera picked up a human-shaped heat signature standing in the same posture as Zack. Same height, same broad shoulders, except Zack was right in front of him. When they turned to face it, the figure vanished in one frame. It didn't feel like a haunting. It felt like rehearsal. Something in Eastfield wasn't trying to scare them. It was learning them. Crossing into the East Wing felt like stepping into a different building entirely. The temperature dropped almost 10 degrees on camera, yet no drafts registered. Zack noted an immediate pressure in his ears, the same sensation scuba divers feel before a plunge. Behind him, Aaron rubbed his temples and whispered, "Something's shifting in here." He wasn't wrong. The layout was impossible. A nurse's station that appeared on the blueprint was gone, replaced by a corridor of doors, each identical, each slightly ajar, each creaking open by a centimeter as the team passed. Billy swept his flashlight down the row, and every door stopped moving at once. Jay muttered, "It's observing." The mimicry escalated. When Zack asked, "Is anyone here with us?" his own voice replied from deeper within the wing, muffled and distorted. "Us here with you." Same cadence, wrong feeling. When the crew turned toward the voice, all 4 EMF meters spiked simultaneously. The cameras jittered, warping the image briefly, like the shape of a hallway bending. Jay swore the walls breathed. The footage later showed plaster dust falling as if exhaled. Then came the scratching. From behind every door, slow, measured scraping against wood, not frantic, not angry, deliberate, like something shaping fingernails, learning texture. Aaron shouted into the dark, demanding it show itself. The scratching paused. Then, from 4 doors at once, a whisper delivered in 4 slightly different tones. "Return the copy." Zack's face tightened. He knew that phrase. Patients had reported duplicates, versions of themselves standing too still, smiling too long, whispering back words a second late. The staff called it mirrored identity anxiety. The state called it containment failure. The team pressed forward into the records room. The shelves were empty except for a single file folder resting in the center of the floor, as though placed intentionally. Inside were photographs of patients staring into mirrors, their reflections slightly delayed. In some photos, the reflections smiled, while the patients did not. As the crew examined the photos, Billy heard breathing directly behind him. He spun, camera raised, but saw only his own reflection in a filthy window pane. Except it wasn't breathing in sync. Its chest rose after his. "Don't look at it," Zack snapped, dragging him away. "It wants recognition." From deeper in the east wing, footstep echoes began returning, slower, heavier, as if matching the crew's path from minutes earlier. The building wasn't just copying voices anymore. It was practicing footsteps, learning movement, matching posture. And with every door they passed, a sliver wider, a grin in wood grain, a watching stillness whispered one truth. It wasn't hunting, it was auditioning. It happened at 2:43 a.m. The crew set a static night vision camera facing the longest hallway in the east wing, one that staff previously described as stretching when no one's watching. Zack instructed everyone to circle back to the main lobby to regroup. As they walked away, the static cam kept recording. Nothing moved for 30 seconds. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, 4 pairs, though the crew were already gone. In the distance, 4 silhouettes appeared, just outlines at first, trudging toward the camera. As the figures drew closer, the night vision feed sharpened. Viewers who caught the European broadcast described the same sickening realization. They looked exactly like Zack, Aaron, Billy, and Jay, down to their clothing, posture, and height. But something was wrong. Their arms hung too loosely, their heads tipped forward, as if straining to wear faces that didn't fit. Halfway down the hall, the copy of Jay stopped moving. The others continued without him. Its body froze, perfectly still, except for its face. Slowly, the jaw unhinged farther than human anatomy allows. It released a guttural groan that wavered into static, matching the cadence of Jay's laugh from earlier in the episode, but distorted, like someone dragging a memory out of tune. Meanwhile, back with the real crew, Billy suddenly swiped the air behind him, yelling, "Who followed me?" But no one was there. Temperature dropped 5 degrees in seconds. Jay saw a shadow leaning around a corner, identical to Zack's outline, then vanishing before it could be identified. Zack hurried everyone to check the static cam. When they reviewed the footage, the copies were closer than where they had left it, only 6 feet from the lens, staring directly into the glass. Worse, one copy lacked shoes. Its bare feet left no prints. The real Zack stood silent, staring at the footage. He muttered, almost to himself, "This is why they shut it down in '94. Before they could rewind, the screen glitched. Not static, compression artifacts appearing in the shapes of familiar faces. The hallway behind the copies bent, rippled, like heat waves. Billy swore he could see the architecture bending around them, folding. And then, frame by frame, each copy's mouth formed a silent word. Soon, when the video cut back to live feed, the hallway was empty. But from behind the crew, deeper in the dark, footsteps answered. The crew retreated toward the lobby, rattled and whispering. Every footstep echoed a half-beat late, like the building was repeating their rhythm, growing more confident with each mimicry. Zack attempted to radio the static cam operator outside, but the earpiece only returned their voices, delayed, deeper, almost amused. In the lobby, Billy started rubbing his forearm compulsively. When Zack asked what was wrong, Billy stammered that his skin felt too loose, like his body wasn't fitted right. Aaron backed away, insisting that Billy's eyes looked slightly farther apart than they were earlier. The camera footage later confirmed subtle differences, millimeters, but enough to trigger primal alarm. Moments later, Jay's voice echoed from the east corridor again, repeating a sentence he had just spoken. "We have to get out now." But this time, the voice sounded excited, not afraid. The real Jay froze. "That wasn't me." Zack ordered everyone to avoid responding to anything that sounded familiar. "Identity recognition is how it spreads," he muttered, sounding like he'd read it somewhere. They pushed toward the exit, but the exit wasn't there. Instead, a new hallway had appeared, walls stretching into darkness. Zack spun, checking the map. Impossible. The building's geometry had changed. The floor plan was rewriting itself. Then came the laughter. At first, it was Aaron's cadence, short, nervous bursts. But when Aaron insisted he wasn't laughing, the sound swelled into Billy's deeper chuckle, then Jay's shaky giggle. One more voice joined, Zack's, and the room fell silent. Every crew member stared at the stairwell. In the darkness beyond the last step, 4 silhouettes stood perfectly still. No cameras pointed at them, but the crew could feel eyes scanning their bone structure, copying height ratios, memorizing posture. Slowly, the shapes leaned forward with unnatural synchronization, as though observing angles of jaw lines, rehearsing familiarity. Zack whispered, "It's learning behaviors, like a script." Suddenly the radio crackled, not static, but a perfectly whispered mimic of Zack's voice. "Stop running. Return the copy." Billy jolted, panic bursting. "Copy of what?" No answer. Just breathing. Slow, delayed, wrong. The crew ran. Equipment clanged. Downed tripods scattered across tile. The building responded with shifting geometry, forcing them through rooms they'd never entered, doorways that hadn't existed minutes before. Mid-sprint, Aaron screamed and grabbed his shoulder. A hand, identical to his, had just brushed past him, but no one was behind him. When they finally reached the entrance arch, a reflection in a cracked glass panel stopped them cold. All 4 appeared in the glass, but one reflection smiled, while its real counterpart trembled. Zack smashed the glass with his flashlight. One reflection didn't shatter. It just blinked. After the glass incident, the crew sprinted toward the loading bay, their original entry point. But when they arrived, the exit door now stood closed from the outside, its handle ice cold, as if it hadn't been touched in decades. Zack slammed his shoulder into it once, twice. The third time, it budged, not from their force, but from something pulling on the other side. Everyone froze. Through the narrow gap, they saw 4 silhouettes beyond the glass, identical heights and stances, patiently waiting. One of them tilted its head, the exact angle Zack does when he questions evidence. Billy yelled, "Back!" and dragged him away. The door slammed shut, as if the building itself inhaled. The radios crackled again, this time fragmented voices, versions of their own speech patterns, sentences they'd spoken earlier in the night, stitched together like audio ransom notes. "Stay with us," the voices pleaded. Then, "Return the copy." Then Jay suddenly collapsed, convulsing. His reflection in a nearby metal cabinet smiled calmly, eyes unblinking. For 5 seconds, Jay's vitals went flat on the IR monitor, before spiking again. When he gasped awake, his voice sounded subtly different. Vowels stretched, consonants delayed. Aaron backed away, horrified. "That's not him," Jay whispered. "It's inside." The reflection whispered back, "Too late." They finally escaped through a service stairwell, one Zack insisted hadn't existed on the blueprint. Outside, each member was visibly altered, eye spacing, vocal pitch, gait cadence, all off by imperceptible but unsettling degrees. Paramedics refused to approach without masks. Network executives seized the footage on arrival. Legal teams quarantined the raw file, citing concerns about behavioral trigger contagion. Internal memos leaked weeks later. Test audiences reported phantom footstep echoes in their homes after viewing rough cuts. One viewer claimed his reflection nodded when he hadn't. Discovery demanded the episode pulled. Lawyers referenced a liability clause meant for neurological artifacts. The building was sealed permanently. Welding torches, concrete slaps, black plastic. State officials denied involvement while wearing mirrored visors. Zack went quiet for months. When he returned, sunglasses hid his eyes. Fans noticed his words occasionally lagged by a fraction of a second. Subtle, but enough to unsettle. And the question that haunted everyone who worked on the episode remained. If something learns you too well, can you be sure you're still the original? Just hours ago, Zack posted a short message to his official channel. No intro, no music, no edits. He stared into the camera longer than necessary before speaking. His voice was slow, syllables dragging like furniture on tile. "The episode wasn't pulled because it was dangerous to us," he said. "It was pulled because it might have been dangerous to you." He explained that the entity inside Eastfield doesn't haunt places. It haunts patterns, faces, voices, behaviors. "If you watch it," he whispered, "you teach it." Before ending the video, he leaned closer and whispered something almost lost to audio compression. "You may already feel it watching." The clip ended abruptly. Comments flooded with viewers claiming their reflection blinked wrong, their footsteps echoed late, their names whispered from empty rooms. Minutes later, the video vanished, but the view count stayed frozen on.